Hey guys, how's it going? I thought I'd do a really quick video today on my production workflow, specifically working with the Korg M1. If you're not familiar with this was a really popular synth, originally in physical form factor, that came out in the early 90s, late 80s, and is responsible for a number of tunes, specifically Robin S, Show Me Love, amongst others. It's come back again in popularity as of the early 2010s, I would say, mainly in UK house music. And Korg were very kind to release a software version of this legendary hardware synth. So I just thought I'd share a few tips on how to get the best out of this plugin in your mix. So if I go ahead and launch an instance of the M1, you're given this default patch. I've just chucked in a random MIDI clip here. You can see piano 16, which is the preset I'm going to be focusing on today. We're going to focus on the house piano. I'll do another video on the organ too at some point. What I'm going to do is get out of this and go straight to the program setting and then pick the in card 1, which is the original card that came with the box, and load up preset number 1, which is piano 16. You can see that is an instantly familiar sound, but I'm not a massive fan of the inbuilt reverb and delay, so I'm going to get rid of those, and we're going to see what we're left with now. It's very mono in the mix, and you kind of want pianos to have a bit of stereo separation. So yeah, oscillator level is fine. I'm going to leave it there. You can play around with the filter and the amp envelopes, but I'll just leave them as they are for the time being. If you want a snappier piano sound like you might find in some of the romplers that have sampled this synth, you probably want to cut the release time if you can help it. So we got our preset loaded in. What's next? We need to do a bit of work to the sound to make it have some more urgency, have some more modernness to it, and to do that, first of all, we're going to start with some EQ. Most of the plugins I'm using today are in the Slate Digital plugin suite, which I will do a separate video on because there's just so much to cover on it. This isn't a paid sponsorship or anything. This is I've had this for about a month and I've been absolutely blown away with how the system works and the sort of sounds that you can create with it. Anyway, EQ. So I'm using a plugin here called Eiosis. I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce that correctly. Air EQ, which is it's a pretty cool EQ. It's got some extra functionality that you don't find in the stock Ableton EQ8, and that is known as Earth and Air. Earth is more for bass. You get an extra nice attenuation, so you can achieve this in Ableton by adding an auto filter and then just adding a bit of resonance at that lowest frequency that you've got in your bass plugin. But we're going to use Air, which is the opposite side of the spectrum, so it adds a little extra attenuation to the HF to really give it that extra presence. So we'll do it before and after. And I'm going to bring the air in. As we've boosted frequencies, it's always a good idea to cut your overall output level just to make sure we're not driving anything into the red, despite Ableton's lax policy on that. The only other thing I'm going to do here is get rid of the honkiness around in our low-mid kind of section. So I'm going to try, it is just trial and error with EQ. You've got to play around with it and see what sounds good. So here we go. So it is round about that 300 to 400 hertz band that is causing us trouble here. So I'm going to just pull that down, and you can see here on the spectrograph that you can see the difference that we're making in the output of the synth. So just little alterations. I'm going to put a low cut at about 50, just because we don't want it going into sub, and then I'm going to try and there we go. Right, I'm pretty happy with how that's sounding now. Okay, so we got our EQ in. Next step is compression and dynamics. So to do that, I'm going to turn to the Slate Digital Virtual Mix Rack, and this is like the main slice of the cake here for the Slate Digital set of plugins. And we're going to start by just loading in a preset again, because it gives us a good starting point to work with. And I've just chosen the piano preset from the classic strip. What I'm going to do before I actually do anything else is just bring down the input, because it likes to drive that quite hard. So what we've been given here is, the main thing that's doing all the work is this FG Stress, which is a model of the Distressor plugin, and I'm going to do another video on compression because that gets quite in depth as well. Basically, this is giving it that nice crunch at the high end, and that will bring it out more in your mix. So. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with how that's sounding. I'll just say that the revival is like a little shimmery effect as well, so you can play around with this, but that's for another video. So finally, reverb and delay. This is really straightforward. There is one go-to plugin for reverb, and that is the Valhalla Vintage Verb or Supermassive, either of the two. I'll go for Vintage Verb here, and I'm going to load in a nice long hall preset here. So we'll just do a large hall and bring the mix down because we put it as an insert rather than a bus. So that sounds a lot better already. You can really hear the richness in that reverb, and that is why I always turn to the Valhalla suite. This is their main plugin, but they do have a selection of a few others, so it's worth checking them out, and they're very reasonably priced. I tend to, just by habit, stick things as an insert rather than on a return bus, but there is a benefit to doing that, specifically when you've got a large reverb like this. So if I create a new return track in live, here we are, and if I move my Valhalla reverb to that, obviously go in and whack the mix up to 100% because we're sending it through a bus, and then if I send to bus A, and then what we can do is if we just duplicate my kick here and make it less of a, make it a 4/4 rhythm. What I can do is, in my reverb plugin, I can add a quick sidechain compressor. Do a bit of that. Yeah, that's the one. And there you go, you've got the reverb that's kind of pumping in the background, which is quite nice. And the final thing I want to do, and this is unfortunately unique to live because I'm not aware of Logic having a filtered delay. I like to use this just to give that really like early 90s feel to the sound. And a filtered delay, it kind of scatters it left and right, sort of like a ping pong delay. But you've got individual control over the left and right filters. You've got 3 filters going on here. So max out the dry sound, and then And there we have it. There is a fairly beefed up M1 Piano 16 preset for use for house tracks. This is my way of doing it. There's many other ways of doing it. I hope it's been helpful, and I hope it's given you an insight into some really cool plugins. I've got another video coming up in the works when I have myself figured out how to use this incredible virtual mix rack, because as you can see here, there is just so much to choose from, and I promise that'll be out very soon. But in the meantime, thanks very much for checking this one out, and we'll see you guys next one.